And one of the most important things about Bando, the way that we've built it, is that Bando is for the global south because we've realized that in the global south, people see crypto as money. People don't see crypto as an investment. I would love to hear how has been your experience. You've seen organizations do those type of activations without a local partner and with a local partner. What's the big difference?
The Brazil landscape. I mean, we've talked about it. Literally, the very first episode of this podcast was how differentiated the Brazilian market is. And I was just got off a call with someone who does Brazilian soft landings for Latin American startups. Like that's their entire business model. That's insane.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze the news that are happening in crypto in Latin America this week. I'm Mav, co-founder and CEO of Bando and Espacio Crypto, and my good friend Kush, founder of Odyssea Labs. Man, how's everything? How has been your week?
It's been a choppy week in the markets. I think one of the cool things about being a builder, to be honest, though, is you tend to not have such a sensitivity to what's going on outside of your little universe, right? So, feeling very happy, very motivated. Lots of things in the mix right now, and yeah, man, can't complain. How about you, man? What's going on this week?
Yeah, the same. I think that prices sometimes you get scared because we have exposure to the industry, but afterwards I just don't care. This was a great week for Bando, for Frontera, for Espacio Crypto, and I'm really motivated. I read this tweet about of Janowitz, the founder and CEO. Well, I don't know if he's the CEO, but one of the founders of Blockworks, where he says something like, "I get hyped up building long-term projects with long-term people, regardless of price." And I resonate so deeply with that. I'm more bullish on, for example, Frontera, the thing that we're building long term, than I don't know, holding Hyperliquid. You know, I really don't care about those things, but I do care deeply about what we're building. So yeah, just
Yeah,
a
man,
reflection.
I fully agree. I mean, we've been like ramping up, I think, a little bit more of what Frontera looks like beyond, just a podcast and, what role we play in the industry. I mean,
Yeah.
I would like to think that we are the leading, at a minimum, just kind of news insight that is consistently covering crypto in Latin America, really touching kind of over kind of key highlights and news, and it's transforming. And I think this is the whole premise behind these different projects, right? A colleague of ours recently shared a little fortune cookie he had, and he said, "Faith is believing there is an ocean when you can only see the stream," right? And so I think
Hmm.
this is like Frontera was a little stream, and we got on our boats and we started rowing, and then now we're getting to the ocean, and it truly is a blue ocean. And yeah, man, I think just super grateful to be able to be cooking this with you. And this, I think Espacio Crypto Odisea overlap is super powerful, man. So yeah, just really, really grateful for that, and looking forward to making more magic happen.
Yeah, definitely. This week we had a call with a potential partner that we are doing some cool stuff with them. And after the call, we had a little chat, you and I, and we thought, dude, we bring a lot of value to the table. Like this joint force is big. And also, I posted this tweet of the Joker, our analyst, always sends me the essay that we're gonna publish this week. And while I was reading it, I gave like zero notes. I always give a ton of notes, but this time I gave zero notes, and I posted this meme of Pharrell listening to some other artist, and he says in NYU, it's like a student in NYU, and Pharrell says, "Dude, I have zero notes for you because you're doing your own thing," and that's exactly the essay that we published today. So if you're listening to this and you're not subscribed to our newsletter, you should go there because this week we published a report on the regulatory landscape, the crypto regulatory landscape in Mexico, just after our episode with Carlos from Legal Paradox. And I just want to share this summary, this table that summarizes the approaches that you can get in a regulatory sense in Mexico, because no one has presented information as simple as we do. So there are two licenses: the BASP, the virtual asset service provider, and the IFPE, that basically that's a digital bank. And in one table, we say how long it takes to approve, the regulator that you need to approach, the legal complexity, the cost. One is under 50K, the other one is around 400K to 1 million. I don't know. I just get so hyped for the research that we're doing. This is, for all the Odyssea startups, man, that you are accelerating and that they want to land in Mexico, basically this is the table that summarizes the regulatory approach they can have. Obviously, they need to go for legal advice. None of this is neither legal nor investment advice, but we are producing dope and really valuable content.
Totally agree, man. Yeah, I mean, I think one of our pillars at Olisa, as we always talk about, is like research is at the foundation of everything we do, because again, we're operating frontier tech and frontier markets, right? And so being able to understand properly, okay, what's going on, how can you engage with different markets and so forth. This is super valuable. Major props to Joker, who's an incredible researcher and writer, and yeah, I've just thoroughly enjoyed his contributions here. So cool, man. But I mean, you guys at Bando also had a huge update this week, right? So give us the scoop on that and what went down. It's probably kind of the most
Yeah.
important news item of this week.
Yeah, well, I think that the most important launch that we've done in Bando yet. So we realized that spending is the best way to off ramp. When you go to the US, you don't say, okay, I need to off ramp Mexican peso and on ramp USD. You just spend. So we started thinking about it, and why should that be different in crypto? Today is different because the fiat stack and the fintech stack are disconnected from the crypto stack. So we've built Bando, the payments protocol in Bando, that basically allows for any user around the world to spend their crypto directly at top merchants like Xbox, Uber, Amazon, Airbnb, Fortnite, with just a couple of clicks. Instead of going through the whole process of off ramping, we are deploying this, and this is live. And one of the most important things about Bando, the way that we've built it, is that Bando is for the global south, because we've realized that in the global south, people see crypto as money. People don't see crypto as an investment. And whenever you see crypto or something as an investment, basically you don't want to sell it. But when you see something as money, basically you need to spend it. That's the definition of, or one of the main use cases of money. You need to spend it. So people that are receiving stable coins and they need to pay for, I don't know, their electricity bill, or maybe they want to buy groceries. They cannot do that as easily yesterday, because Bando didn't exist, and today they can do it. And also, I would love to hear your take on this, because we've talked a lot about stablecoins, but I think that trillions of dollars will flow into stablecoins in the upcoming years. And if that thesis holds, we need a payments protocol instead of a payments processor. So that's the evolution that we're thinking in Bando. The evolution from payments processor to payments protocol, because everything runs on chain through smart contracts.
Yeah, we just had a Twitter Spaces a couple days ago with the Mantle crew, and we spoke about what the key opportunities are for crypto in Latin America. And one of the resounding highlights was payments, right? Why payments? Because when I go to pay today in Latin America, oftentimes a lot of merchants won't accept cards, or they're purely cash based. But inevitably, we'll see these transitions begin to happen. And the problem with paying with cards, oftentimes in the region, is these merchants will take like a 5% sort of cut on the amount of money that is actually sent to them. So they oftentimes
Yep.
prefer cash. And in fact, it's very common when you go to pay someone in Latin America, like, hey, can you pay me in cash? It's just like my BASP, sort of my payments processing platform, is going to take the cut off of this. And this is, again, the value proposition of crypto, is basically being able to disintermediate these inefficient markets, right? And become much more equitable when we think about the distribution of value, and much more sort of peer-to-peer based. And maybe there will be a cut, but maybe it's just like 10 basis points, right? So I think for you guys being able to position this and also make crypto spendable, which I think is huge. I think that's honestly like one of the big things that's also really exciting, is how do we just reduce this sort of curtain between the IRL world and the crypto world? Because what's the point of me having any sort of crypto if I can't use it in the real world, unless I have to go through some sort of like cumbersome off ramp process? So I think this is huge, man, and like really props to you and the team, like navigating the idea maze, coming up on this idea. I'm excited to see you guys continue to push this forward and see how kind of that PMF exploration goes as well.
Yeah. We're super excited. We're starting with this approach of letting people in crypto wallets spend their crypto directly in big merchants. But our ambition is that every payment in the world should go through Bando. So this is a beachhead market, and we are thinking on obviously $1 trillion market. And I don't know, my third chakra gets fired up when I speak about this. So, but dude, also we have some updates on the base Buildathon, that the base batch in LatAm. You're collaborating there. Tell us all about it. What happened this week?
Yeah, so we had a Spaces this week with Sen, who runs global builder programs with Base. And we basically, just as a recap for the audience, like the way this program works is you start off at the Buildathon, then you transition into an incubator, then you pitch in front of some VCs, and then you go into an accelerator program, right? And so what was really exciting here was we basically were able to rally a whole bunch of the different sort of community members across Latin America. And I think it's increasingly like something we think about a lot within Olisa is how do we create sort of like a common shelling point for different ecosystems to come together. And yes, it's really important to have like localized country specific activations, but I'm personally a really big fan of like regional activations. But I mean, you're Mexican. I feel like Espacio Cripto is a very like generally like Mexican audience, although people listen to it across the region. How do you think about this like overlap? And we can come back to the base badges program just a bit. But like, how do you think about sort of localized engagement versus regional activations, and I guess also in the context of this podcast and your work and so forth?
I think that something that has been really surprising for me is that in Bando we've interviewed a ton of users in Africa because we're gonna announce something soon in that region, and I think that if you identify the right people, you can accelerate like mimetic expansion of a message. For example, we interviewed a couple of people to do like as user research, and they started creating content about Bando. And I think that also that's a really common behavior in the emerging markets because people see that there is opportunity and they want to work to build up that opportunity. So I'm really bullish on those type of approaches. But then again, if you do not know how to do them, you're gonna basically waste your money. And I'm gonna shield the work that you do at Odisea. I think that if Base wanted to do this without a local partner, without like everything that you built, they would be spending maybe 5 times more with 5 times less impact, because it's not just a matter of understanding the market, but it's a matter of knowing who to talk to. So I think that if you're a company exploring on how to enter the LatAm market, that's the way. And I think that Frontera is the first part because you need to have data about it, and then you need to have feet on the ground. Like we recorded with Ben from Mantle that he's the most bullish person in Latin America. He's even more bullish than any president of a Latin American country. I don't know. He's extremely bullish, and that's one of his thesis. You need to be in the region to expand yourself in the region. So yeah, that's my take. I would love to hear how has been your experience. You've seen organizations do those type of activations without a local partner and with a local partner. What's the big difference? Do you have any data that support this thesis?
It's all about what your team's KPIs come down to be honest, and like what you're optimizing for, right? And so oftentimes, generally, like teams go into anything blind without clear goals, without clear objectives, without a sense for this is what success looks like. And then whenever you're executing a strategy, you may have your endogenous metrics, but then you have to think about your exogenous environment under which you're operating under. And oftentimes, if you're, maybe a European or US based institution and this is crypto and generally, right? Like any sort of player that wants to engage in any foreign environment, having a really clear sense of what success looks like and how do you optimize for success is super crucial, right? And I think that's where Odisea comes in with part of our work, right? Because we do a number of different things across the stack, but when we think about sort of these soft landing engagements and how people can sort of optimize for their engagements in the region, I think for us it's really, really important to be able to say, hey, these are the kind of key networks that you should be driving through. These are the key regulators you should be meeting with. These are the key sort of financial players in the region that are going to be really valuable for you as well. And all this is sort of adjusted according to people's expectations and needs. But yeah, I mean, I think so far, I do feel, and I think like Ben, as he shared in our last podcast, has really appreciated, I think, the value add that, by partnering with us and with Espacio Cripto and really most local players, you end up getting a much stronger long-term retention, right? So I think that's just like overall the way I think about these things. And yeah, man, I'm super excited to keep, pushing the ecosystem forward and being able to drive like more and more insights locally on what's happening in the region and figuring out, where are those key leverage points for LatAm builders. Because I think that's what we have to ultimately optimize for is like more bandos in the world, right? More capas, more incredible startups. Because that's what really wins, right?
Yeah. I think that Crecimiento, they have the best thesis around it. I don't recall the numbers, but they say something like in order for Argentina to grow 10% or whatever amount, you need 600 startups, because out of these 600 or maybe 6,000, if the survival rate is between 5 and 10%, basically you need to go through the funnel. It's just like so obvious when you put it that way. It's the same in Latin America. Also, yesterday I was talking with one of my investors, a friend of mine, and he said, that Latin America grabs less than 1%, around of 1% of the total VC money in the world. So whenever people say, like, LatAm, guys, you have 50 unicorns, it's like, yeah, with 1% of the capital, I mean, we are as resourceful as any other, we are more resourceful than any other region. So the amount of money returned to investors in Latin America is the greatest for all regions, because we don't have that much money flying around. So, I mean, we need to build this MVP. with what was maybe the budget of two senior engineers in Silicon Valley, you know, and we have a product. So I'm bullish on that take. The problem is that we need to identify builders that can execute upon that, and I think that you guys at Todice are doing maybe the best work in the region around that. But yeah, and cool, exciting week. We've frequently discussed how each region or each country in Latin America has different approaches and cultural elements and maybe user personas. And we always say that Brazil are the most digens in LatAm. Mexico are the ones that are more fearful. Argentinians are the most innovators, builders. And right now we have three news on Brazil that confirms this about how financially forward thinking they are, aka digens. That's the right, like the politically correctness for saying digens is they are thinking. There are like rumors about Brazil thinking of a Bitcoin strategic reserve. That connects a lot with Drex, their CBDC. It's really interesting the way that they approach this because they want a CBDC, but at the same time they have an open, one of the most open regulations in about crypto. Also, the largest bank in Brazil called Itaú is thinking about its own stablecoin. And I mean, if Bank of America is thinking about it, why don't they? You know, and maybe then afterwards it comes Nubank, afterwards Revolut. So really exciting. And also, one of the major pension funds from Brazil is evaluating to invest in crypto. And I know that lots of these news are like the announcement of an announcement or however you want to see it. But I mean, just having those headlines in media like CoinDesk or Cointelegraph talk about the relevance of how crypto is important in Brazil specifically. We don't see this about Colombia, Mexico, or Argentina, you know. So what are your takes here on
I mean, it's
the
just
on
like,
Brazilians?
man, the Brazil landscape. I mean, we've talked about it. Literally, the very first episode of this podcast was how differentiated the Brazilian market is. And I was just got off a call with someone who does Brazilian soft landings for Latin American startups. Like that's their entire business model. And that's insane, right? The fact that you need in the same continent that shares, I think, a lot of the same values and comes from a very similar history. Brazil's economy is just so big and so independent. You know, they're like, we don't need to speak Spanish. It's not like Brazilians speak Spanish, right? Like I'd say it's like the exception, not the norm, that a Brazilian speak Spanish because they just operate in their own world and they speak great English. And I think that's genuinely the big success of Brazil too,
Dude,
is that.
actually, I don't agree on that. I think that most Brazilians speak Spanish, which makes them even more powerful because it's like, oh, I can speak your language, but you cannot speak mine, and I can speak English like really well. So I think that just to like give a note there, they might be like as a people not outliers because obviously the best Mexican founder is better than the regular Brazilian founder, but the average of people, like the level of people working in Brazil, I think it's really big, and not working in Brazil, but Brazilian people are really great people professionally.
All right, I'm going to counter your counter with a counter. According to Perplexity's research, 4% of Brazilians speak Spanish. There's obviously like big distribution as far as like the populations that are like who is in
Yeah.
that 4% and like, you know, how much interaction do we have with that? But my point is like regardless, right? I think the main takeaway is like they just operate in basically their own economy, right? And I love that it is a very forward thinking, financially speaking economy, and that they have just that wherewithal to say, hey, we're going to basically advance like. And we've seen it with Pix, we've seen it with Drex, we're seeing it with all these other sort of big financial innovations. It's not surprising that Brazil is now considering a Bitcoin strategic reserve, that their banks are looking to launch stablecoins. Like very few other countries in the region are taking such a pro-innovation stance when it comes to crypto. So hats off to, again, Brazil and all of the incredible like people who are pushing that ecosystem forward. It's funny though, because most people that we come into connection with, like they spend most of their time connecting on like WhatsApp or Telegram. And Brazilians also obviously WhatsApp, but like Discord is another big channel. But like for Latin America, Telegram is such a big distribution channel, and it seems like less so maybe in Brazil, right? So I think it was really cool to have Milab, who came and gave us quite a few insights on the Brazilian market. But no, this is really exciting, and again, it's like more institutions doing these things. I think the more we have of that, the better, basically. How are you seeing it? I mean, like I love that you come with this sort of background from consulting in Brazil, because I think that's such an important perspective to bring to the table.
Well, yeah, I think that, as I said, Brazilians are great professionals. They are smart, they are hardworking. Also, most of them are fit, like strong, physically fit. And that's cultural. I mean, you go to the streets of Sao
Especially in
Paulo
Rio.
and, I mean, in Rio, they are all, they
Gods.
are,
Yeah.
yeah, they are all, it's like the Olympus there. But the thing is that the way that I think about it is that they also know that they are the most important country in Latin America. Um, so when I was doing a lot of consulting in Brazil, around Brazil, it's such a different market. Because it's huge. They have really developed industries. So yeah, I think that also in Frontera we need to deep dive a little deeper in Brazil. We'll need to look for. And actually, I know who we're gonna invite. I'll tell you afterwards. But it's perfect for this topic. And moving on to the next important news, just moving fast. This week, BitGet announced that they obtained a license in El Salvador. And basically, why is this important? Because I think that BitGet is one of the most recent comers in the exchange race, and they are really challenging Binance. That's super interesting. And the way that by them having this license, basically they have the one of the same licenses that Bitso has, where they operate their Web3 wallet. Bitso sunset that product, but when you read the terms and conditions, they were operating the product out of the El Salvador entity. So basically, they have the same license. Also, it's the same license that Tether has. So it's really interesting how El Salvador is bringing all these big companies because of this forward-thinking regulation. Um, you've been to El Salvador. Why do you think that companies like BitGet, Bitso, Tether are landing there?
I think it's just like a very convenient license for any centralized exchange or crypto operator to fall under. And interesting insight about El Salvador, by the way, I'll return to the question. The US State Department, that is like the gold standard for travel advisory warnings, and sets these different parameters for how dangerous a country is and therefore recommends citizens to go or not. Um, just announced that they were making El Salvador sort of like essentially called El Salvador one of the safest countries in the world, right? So gave it like, hey, El Salvador is now, it's safer to go to El Salvador than Sweden.
Well, that's so random.
Yeah.
Well, but I think that it's fascinating what Nayib Bukele has done. Obviously, there is these human rights sacrifices that you need to do in order to get there. There was this clip in Twitter circulating about someone that was incarcerated. This person went to jail for a year, but he was mistakenly taken to jail. And after this person was released, he said, "Well, yeah, it was a mistake, but I mean, if this is what it takes for us to have safety, I'll take 1 year of prison." That's a. I mean, I won't take 1 year of prison if I'm not guilty. That's
Mm.
nonsense. But I mean, that speaks of how desperate they were before all this reform, and this type of economic progress. That's that economic progress, because now they have a couple of huge companies operating out of El Salvador, paying taxes there. Eventually, maybe some of the people working at those companies will move to El Salvador. Yeah, super interesting what they've done. I'm really curious to go. And dude, the final topics for on this week's Frontera are around Bitso. Bitso now has a new general manager in the retail business unit. Is Alexandre Mehrad. Sorry for butchering that name, but he posted, or well, this news came out of how the new director of Bitso Retail thinks about the plans in the future for the company. It's really interesting that he's coming out of Kraken, so he has a big experience in exchanges and building this type of companies. So really excited about this new position. What do you think that is Bitso's largest or most important challenge in the retail business unit? Because in the business unit, they're crushing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like the two things or three things perhaps, like an exchange generally wants to optimize for. One is integrations and your capacity to like make crypto useful, both like on and off ramping, cards, how much does this app become your sort of super app in a way, right? I think that's really important. The other thing is the user experience sort of the app itself, I think is invaluable. I'm such a like design and UX snob. Like I genuinely you need to have a very smooth user experience. And then thirdly, I think the other key thing is the liquidity and rates that users get on your platform as well. So, I think I think feel frankly with Bitso, you'll have a much better insight on where do you feel Bitso is lacking across these three like verticals I just mentioned, and how do those gaps present an opportunity for Bitso to transform itself, right? So it's integrations, user experience, and capital efficiency.
I think that the first two are the most important ones. Bitso has the lead on capital efficiency, and that's why they've been so able to exploit the business to business market. In order to have a B2B market, you need to have deep liquidity, and they win there for for now, because we know that there is a lot of competition coming. The user experience, I think that it's a matter, I would say that it's underlying opportunity of deploying code fast. Bitso doesn't launch a lot of new products frequently. I think that Bitso is in the way where Coinbase was around 2020, where basically Coinbase had the same product for like 6 years. They had a really hard time launching new things, and I don't know what they did back then, but out of like from one quarter to another, they started launching a bunch of stuff. They launched the Coinbase wallet. They integrated new L2s. They integrated more products in the swaps. So I
They
think that
made base
that's a
happen
very,
as well.
yeah. Basically, they became an execution machine. Do you remember this? Coinbase was like trad in 2020, and now it's super dope. Uh,
Yeah.
so, and it's a matter of the Y Combinator people says it like really frequently. It's a matter of how fast you can ship new code. So I think that that's an opportunity, and that element translates in the things that you said in integrations and UX. So I think that that's a big challenge. And reading Alexander's, I think that we'll need to invite him to Frontera to know the right pronunciation of his name. This interview, he says that it's a matter of merging TradFi and crypto. So I mean, Coinbase is looking at stocks. Kraken bought Ninja Trader. I think that Binance had stocks and they need to delist it. What will impede Bitso of having stocks? And this note is really clear about basically that's the initial product. I think I don't have any insight, but that's my guess
Yeah.
on the priorities for Bitso.
Yeah. I mean, I think the capacity for one to be able to manage much of their financial life is going to be really exciting. So, let's see where Bitso heads there. And hopefully, I think the guy's French, so I guess technically it's Alexandre would be the technically kind of correct way of saying it if you really want to nail it. But
Yeah,
I'm Alex. Maybe we'll just call him Alex on the podcast.
yeah.
But yeah, man. So no, very exciting, and I'm looking forward to having him on. So no, man, it's been a super just like moved week. And then speaking of Bitso, there's also the stablecoin conference happening August 27th to 28th. Which it's being presented by Solana, Arbitrum, Ripple, a few other folks as well. We've got Global Dollar Network. I don't think I've heard of them.
Yeah, me neither.
Bridge, Mesh, Circle, Lightspark, Bitgo, Visa, Aptos, Portal. Yeah, basically a bunch of I think some of the key players, Portal, who you guys work with as well.
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, I mean, one, that's a very long URL, probably one of the longest URLs I've seen recently.
Really, really exciting. I think that we're gonna be present in the conference. It's in a venue that it's like 6 blocks away from my childhood house, and that venue has a cinema that was like my childhood cinema. So I don't know, good memories there. I think it's really relevant to see like a real big business stablecoin conference in Mexico. I'm super excited about it. And man, thank you for this week. We'll keep shipping. Lots of things happening. For a moment this week, it seemed that basically we were going into a global recession, and we were not going. It was going to be impossible to do anything. But we're back. It seems like for 90 days at least, we are bullish, even more bullish than ever on crypto and building. So yeah, thank you for coming along this ride.
Let's go. Yeah, man. To everyone listening, stay safe out there. Don't use leverage. And time in the market beats timing the market. So no, this has been a really, really, just I think kind of relatively relaxed podcast. We've got a bunch of, what I'm also really looking forward to is all the guests we have coming on. We're recording next week with one of my favorite thinkers in the space, who is doing a big push into the region too. So I'm looking forward to recording that and pushing that into the world as well.
Amazing. Great. Well, thank you for you that are listening. Thank you for listening. Go and subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you, Joker, for your pieces, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Peace. Ciao.